I think it's such an important area of government relations and governance that people do not generally know enough about. At one time, 50% of my law practice was on Aboriginal land issues. I actually was involved in the Musqueam dispute. You mentioned Delgamuukw, so if you know about Delgamuukw, you probably remember the Musqueam dispute of 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was a widow with 2 children. My parents said they'd live with me and help me out for a couple of years. And I bought a leasehold property on Musqueam First Nations in South Vancouver. At the time, it had been a peaceful community for 25 years. Within a year of me buying in there, everything changed. And it changed because of government policy, because of government handing over with literally a pen stroke, more management of those lands to the Musqueam, okay. But in so doing, people there went from paying their property taxes to the City of Vancouver based on fair market value to paying their property taxes, all of them, to the Musqueam First Nation. And there was a land rent that had always been there. It was up for renegotiation. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I could talk a whole segment just about this. But the end result was a lawsuit where the First Nations sued all the leaseholders. It went to the Supreme Court of Canada. I was on that Supreme Court of Canada litigation team. We won that case. We won it on the basis that, yes, there should be an increase in that land rent, which the leaseholders were prepared to pay. But First Nations wanted 3 times the amount of what was being offered. The Supreme Court of Canada agreed that the leaseholder position was sound. The problem was, and the reason I'm bringing this up, this is not an academic thing to me. This is my lived experience. No one would give an appraisal on those homes anymore. Therefore, there was no bank lending, no mortgage lending, no refinancing no refinancing available. Because you couldn't get an appraisal. What is the market value? And this had to make its way all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada. It cost the leaseholders $1.5 million in legal and expert fees, which they all pooled together to try and pay to save their homes. So I have seen it, I've litigated it, I've been there, and I know that the fears around the Cowichan decision are very real. What I am upset about with this and where it needs to change is the Crown's position with respect to this kind of litigation. And there's a lot of, including First Nations leaders right now, who've said to me, well, just let the courts figure it out. You know, it'll wind its way through the courts. What they're missing in that conversation, and it started with Delgamuukw, was the Delgamuukw decision said there should be primacy of private property rights. A former NDP government under Mike Harcourt changed the litigation team and changed their instructions. They were no longer going to defend that position before the court. So the Crown lost at the Court of Appeal and lost at the Supreme Court of Canada. And that started a whole series of endless litigation on these topics. In the Cowichan decision, the judge quite clearly said, no one from the provincial or federal governments appeared to argue this point in front of me. I do not have that evidence in front of me,
the point
nor
being
those arguments.
Private property rights.
That Aboriginal inherent property rights can exist with private property rights, but ultimately the private property rights must have primacy. The Land Titles Act and the land title system has to mean something. In other words, perhaps if it isn't affecting private property, there can be some transference of ownership. But when it's affecting private property, it must take precedent, or else our whole system's going to collapse. And now with 105% of British Columbia under land claims, with a dearth of modern treaties, we need to, turbocharge, if that's the right phrase, those kinds of negotiations. We need to understand the relationship. I think it can be based in reconciliation and respect. I know it's a sensitive topic, but DRIPA is not the answer. It needs to go, but it does need to be replaced with something. I think most people...
Just to be clear, Cowichan is one issue. DRIPA is quite different.
That's right. Right. But I was trying to jump over to, because you prefaced it with that. I'm just trying to say the fear is real by private property owners. It's not based in nothing. But there has to be a change in the Crown position. The federal government has also abandoned the field. And they did that about 8-10 years ago as well. If the Crown does not stand up for all its citizens and tries to find balance and tries to find reconciliation, then who is going to? No one.